Geronimo Stilton, 4 mice deep in the jungle. I was lying on the psychiatrist's couch. It was made of soft, fluffy cat fur, but it wasn't very comfortable. I was worried. "How serious is it, Dr. Shrinkfur?" I murmured, chewing my whiskers. The doctor leaned back in his chair. "Ack! First, I had to know more," he squeaked in his funny accent. "When did this thing start?" I sighed. I was never the bravest mouse on the block. In fact, I guess you could say I've always been a bit of a fraidy mouse. I've never enjoyed spooky holidays like Halloween. I hide in my mouse hole on the 4th of July. Fireworks make me nervous, but lately it seemed like everything was making me jumpy. Well, at first I was only afraid to go to the dentist. But then I suddenly became afraid of elevators. Then came the fear of flying. That was followed by fear of spiders, snakes, closed spaces, and crowds. After that, I became afraid of height and the dark. I took a deep breath. Just talking about all my fears was making me afraid. Oh yes, I almost forgot. "Doctor," I added, "I'm also afraid of cats." Dr. Shrinkpaw waved his paw. "You are a mouse. You have to be afraid of cats," he said. I twirled my tail nervously. Then I sat up. "Please, Dr. Shrinkpaw," I squeaked. "Give it to me straight." He shook his head solemnly. "Well, this could be serious," he began. "Or it could not be. This is up to you." I scratched my head. "Well, is the cure gonna take long?" I asked. The doctor jotted down some notes on a pad. "Well, it could be long," he said. "Or it could not be long. This is up to you." Now, I was confused. If everything was up to me, what was I paying the most famous psychoanalyst in New York City to do? "Will this treatment be expensive?" I asked. The doctor stood up. "Well, it could be expensive," he said. "Or it could be not. This is up to you." This rodent was beginning to sound like a broken record. Just then, he put his paw on my shoulder. "Remember, this is all up to you," he repeated. "You must face your fears. Otherwise, you will never get well. I will see you next Wednesday. For now, it will be $100. Thank you." I left Dr. Shrinkfur's office feeling much lighter. That's because my wallet was completely empty. Well, if he was the most famous psychoanalyst in New York City, said it was up to me to get well, then I guess it was. For the next few days, I couldn't leave the house. What if it rained? What if a giant cat with 2 heads attacked me? Yes, I had to face the fact that I was getting worse. I was afraid of everything. Then one morning, the phone rang. "Hello? Stilton speak." "Geronimo Stilton," I murmured. It was my sister Thea. She is a special correspondent for the newspaper I run, the Rodents Gazette. It is the most famous newspaper on Mouse Island. "Geronimo, where have you been?" squeaked my sister. "It's been days since you were in the office." I could tell she was annoyed. "Did you forget about the 2 television interviews? And what about the conference at the press club? Have you lost your calendar? Or maybe you're just turning into a cheese brain?" I could hear her thumping her paw angrily on the desk. Uh-oh. When my sister gets mad, she's like my Uncle Cheesy Belly when the deli runs out of mozzarella balls. There's no calming her down. Well, you see," I murmured, "I wasn't feeling too well, but I'll be there tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow, for sure." The next day, I made a decision. It was time to get off my tail. I couldn't stay inside forever. I took a deep, deep breath and forced myself to leave the house. I took the stairs. No, I wasn't ready for the elevator yet. I was too afraid of closed spaces. Then I opened the front door and stuck my snout outside. It was so noisy. I could barely hear myself think. Car horns blared, delivery trucks rumbled down the street. Had it always been this loud? Carefully, I set a paw on the pavement. Nothing happened. I was so relieved. I did it. I really did it. Why was I so afraid to go outside? It's no big deal. At last, things were starting to look up. I walked to the newsstand to buy a paper, and had hardly opened it when a flower pot fell from a window ledge, hitting me on the head. Stumbling, I crashed right into a lamppost. Then I tripped onto a mouse hole cover. I fell and bashed my snout on the hard pavement. As I was getting up, a taxi ran over my tail. then a pigeon decided to poop on my nose. It all happened in 30 seconds flat. Help! I shrieked in a panic. I immediately scampered back home. See, I was right all along, I squeaked out loud. Going out is dangerous business. From now on, I'm staying put. I locked the door. It took a little while. I had added 5 extra deadbolts. You can never be too safe. Thea called again the next day. She was at the office, even though it was a Sunday. Geronimo, how are you? She asked. Well, I've got a cold, I murmured. I pretended to sneeze. Achoo! There was silence on the other end. I could tell my sister knew I was faking it. Well, don't worry, she finally squeaked. We'll just run right over to Dr. Goodpaws. He'll give you a good cold and an injection to fix your cold. Maybe a couple shots would do the trick. My eyes popped out of my fur. No! I shrieked in terror. No! Shots, please. I'm already feeling much better. I just need to relax at home for a few more days. You know, unwind. More silence from the other end. Uh-oh, my sister wasn't buying it. So, I heard you went to see Dr. Shrinkfur, she murmured at last. Do you have a problem, Geronimo? I heard another voice in the background. Geronimo has a problem? Maybe he should get his snout out of the books. That mouse is too brainy for his own good, I groaned. It was my annoying cousin Trap. He runs a thrift store called Cheap Junk for Less. He tells the worst jokes, and he loves to play pranks on me. Then I heard another voice. What's the matter, Uncle Geronimo? Can I say hello to him? It squeaked. I smiled. It was my favorite nephew Benjamin. The next thing I knew, my sister had put me on the speakerphone. Go ahead, tell us everything, Geronimo, she demanded. I chewed my whiskers. Well, I went to see Dr. Shrinkfur because I was sort of having a little problem. When I was done talking, Trot was the first to pipe up. So what did Dr. Shrinkfur tell you to do, he asked. I told him that doctor's advice, if I wanted to get rid of my fears, I had to face them only. I was too afraid to start. I had to face them by myself. Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. Ring, 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 ring. I did not answer it, but the doorbell kept ringing. It was 10 times worse than the ding of a toaster oven. What I was now afraid of was coming towards me. I wanted to stick my head underwater to drown out the horrible noise. Finally, I went to the door. A package for Mr. Stilton, a small voice squeaked. I didn't move. Then I heard a loud sniff. This smells like a box of cheesy chews to me, the voice continued. What a lucky mouse. Instantly, my mouth began to water. I scratched my head. I couldn't just leave a box of cheesy chews in front of my step. They would melt for sure. All of this delicious chocolate and cheese gone to waste. It was unthinkable. It was unimaginable. It was unmousy. I waited for a couple of minutes, then I carefully unlocked the door. I stuck my snout outside, and then, before I could even squeak, 6 paws grabbed me. They lifted me up and threw me into a car. Help! I shrieked. I'm being mouse snapped. Someone started the car. We shot off with a squeal of tires. I felt like I was like in a movie, you know? One of those high-speed cat and mouse adventure movies. Only this wasn't a movie. This was real. I blinked. At the wheel sat my sister, Thea, with my cousin Trap at her side. My nephew Benjamin kept me company in the back. But I'm afraid to go outside, I shrieked in terror. Trap squeaked. Oh, don't be such a baby. He shoved me a cheesy chew into my mouth. I wanted to tell him I wasn't a baby. I just had a problem with leaving my house and with driving in fast cars and with putting my paws under those pie drawers in the public bathrooms. They can be so hot. A mouse can burn his or her fur right off. But I couldn't say a word. My mouth was full. Oh, how I love cheesy chews. Trap was happily squeaking away. Tell me, Cousin Kinsey, he babbled. Do you like dark chocolate with those blue cheese filling best? Or the cheddar and caramel creams? Without waiting for a reply, he shoved another cheesy chew into my mouth. It was so good. My mood was beginning to lift. Benjamin sat nibbling away. Look, Uncle Geronimo, he squeaked. Here's a caramel Swiss dip. My favorite. He offered a mozzarella and marshmallow roll to Thea. Try this one, Auntie, he said. It's yummy. I must say, the cheesy chews were delicious. We polished them off in a jiffy. I was so busy munching chocolate that I lost track of time. Suddenly, the car stopped. I got out. That's when it hit me. We were at the airport. I hate airports. Not just because I hate flying. Airports are so crowded and busy. All of those rodents pushing around is enough to give me a mouse-sized headache. Why have you brought me here? I asked in a panic. My cousin Trap winked at me and laughed. Oh, we're just getting started, Jerrykins, he said mysteriously. What do you mean? I asked. I was beginning to worry. But before long, I could say another word. Trap shoved me into a luggage cart. Let the fun and games begin, he squeaked. Then he pushed me at the breakneck speed through the airport. Make way, he screamed with glee. Don't you just love speeding? No, I wailed in horror, but my cousin was in a row. I'm not talking about the rolling luggage cart. Trap was running so fast, his paws were barely touching the ground. Suddenly, he stopped in front of the very important rodent waiting lounge. A pretty female mouse with blonde fur was just coming out. She was wearing a very trendy safari outfit, with a synthetic cat fur vest and a pair of lace-up leather boots. A necklace made of shark's teeth completed the look. Trap stopped in front of the stranger. I smoothed my fur. The pretty mouse seemed to be staring right at me. Oh my, she exclaimed. Aren't you Geronimo Stilton, the famous writer? I blushed to the end of my whiskers. The whiskers twirled her shark's teeth necklace. She then leaned towards me. Could I please have your autograph? She asked. I've read all your books. They're so exciting. I think they're one of my favorite is The Curse of the Cheese Pyramid. It made me want to travel to Egypt. It also made me enjoy cat and mouse in a haunted house. It was gripping. Only a very special mouse could write it. I was flattered. It was so nice to meet a fan, especially such a pretty one. I was about to say something clever when Trap took off again. We bowed towards the elevator with a squeal of tires. Minutes later, my cousin dumped me off the luggage cart. I landed in a heap on the floor. Oopsie daisies, Trap chuckled. I picked myself up. Then I straightened my glasses. My cousins hit a button on the wall next to us. That's when I realized we had made it to the elevator. No! I shrieked at the top of my lungs. I can't get on that. I'm afraid of elevators. My Trap just twirled his tail. Don't worry, Jerrykins, he tried. There's nothing to worry about. Just don't think about it. The elevator doors opened. I tried to run away, but Trap stuck on his paw and stepped on my tail. I tripped, but before I could stop myself, I had rolled right into the elevator. Trap hopped in behind me. See? Nothing to do it, he said. The doors slid shut. I gulped, then closed my eyes. I would never make it. I was already having problems breathing. My tail was trembling. My whiskers were dripping with sweat. It doesn't get any worse than this, I thought, but then it did. Trap stamped at my paw. I shrieked. The pain was horrible. At last, the doors opened. No need to thank me, squeaked my cousin happily. I told you, just don't think about it. But now, I've had enough. Take me back home, I insisted. I got in the elevator, but I'm not getting on a plane. I'm afraid of flying. As usual, my cousin seemed to ignore me. Instead, he raised his eyebrow. Look over there, he whispered in my ear. It was the pretty mouse we had met earlier. She was standing at the chicken desk. I couldn't help smile. She really was attractive, and she really was a fan of my books. What a great combination. I should have found out her name. Maybe we could be pen pals. Maybe we could share a grilled cheese sandwich at the Squeak Chew in some time. I stared dreamily into space. I didn't notice my cousin scamper over to the Mouse-Ear Chicken Center. He returned, waving 3 tickets in the air. Here we are, he squeaked. Waking me out of my dream, Thea, Benjamin, and I have seats at the back of the plane. Geronimo, you are in seat 11B. I shook my head. But I can't sit alone, I stammered. I just told you, I'm afraid of flying. Then I heard a soft voice behind me. It was a pretty stranger. Did you say 11B? She murmured. I nodded. How exciting, she exclaimed. I'm in 11A. That means we'll sit together, I grinned. What a sweet mouse. It would be nice to spend more time with a fan. Maybe I could get on the plane after all. Beside me, Trap winked. For some reason, he looked very pleased with himself. What was this all about? But there was no time to think. We were already on board. By the way, where are we going? I whispered to Trap as we stood in line. Yes, it's a beautiful place, he mumbled. Lots of fresh air and sunshine, you're gonna love it. For the first time since I'd been mouse-napped, I began to relax. Maybe a little vacation would be some good. I could sleep until noon, take a dip in the pool, watch the sunset over the ocean. That's right, Trap continued. We're headed for the ratty trap jungle on the Rio Mosquito. My eyes opened wide. Ratty trap jungle? Rio Mosquito? What an odd place for a resort. Oh well, I sighed. Maybe the mosquitoes were friendlier in the tropics. A few minutes later, we boarded the plane. I quickly found my seat next to the pretty stranger. I'm so honored to be sitting next to you, gushed my fan. You're a real genius. Your books have changed my life. I'm so flattered. I didn't even realize we had taken off. For the next few hours, I chatted with my new friend. I was having so much fun, I forgot all about my fear of flying. Unfortunately, my obnoxious cousin took that moment to remind me. He began shouting at me through a megaphone. Just don't think about it, he squeaked at the top of his lungs. The other passengers nearly jumped out of their seats. They shot him murderous looks, but Trap didn't care. He was having too much fun. Just don't think about it, he repeated over and over. For once, I decided to take my cousin's advice. I stopped thinking about flying. Instead, I thought about wringing his neck. Soon, we were landing. My pretty new friend was still chattering away. Oh, silly me, she laughed. I almost forgot to introduce myself. My name is Penelope Poisonfur. You can call me Pee-Pee for short. I grinned. Maybe this would be a good time to mention my pen pal idea. After all, I didn't want to lose touch with Pee-Pee. She was one special mouse. But before I had a chance to ask Pee-Pee, Pee-Pee began whispering in my ear. Do you know why I'm going to Rio Mosquito, she asked. Then she told me. It seemed Penelope had signed up to take some kind of special course. The course is open to only a few choice rodents. Suddenly, she grabbed both of my paws. I just had the greatest idea, she squeaked. Why don't you come with me? She put out a piece of paper from her bag. All you have to do is sign this form, she added. I don't know what to say. I'd never met such a bold mouse before. Bold and charming. Well, I'm sort of traveling with my family, I began. I glanced at the back of the plane. My cousin was busy launching spitballs into the air. I pictured the vacation. Trap would probably be playing pranks on me the whole time. I ended up with a knot in my tail and itching power in my bed. I turned back to my new friend. What kind of course is it? I asked. Pippi threw her paws around my shoulder. Trust me, she murmured. It's just what you need. You'll feel like a new mouse. Now I pictured myself in a lush green tropical paradise. Maybe we would do the yoga by the pool or something deep breathing exercises by the soothing ocean. Are you sure it's going to be relaxing? I asked. I guarantee you it's going to be the best thing for you, Pee-Pee insisted. She smiled flirtatiously. I was completely charmed, so I signed it. In a flash, she snatched up the form. For some reason, she had the strangest look on her face. No, it wasn't the smile this time. It was more like a sneer. Let the fun and games begin, she squeaked. How very strange, I thought. Where had I heard those words from before? How very strange. I left the plane. I had to find Thea. I wanted to introduce her to my new friend. I knew she would be thrilled to meet one of my new fans. My sister calls me a bookworm, but I know she's proud of my success. Thea! I squeaked happily when I found her. This is Penelope Poisonfur. She's a fan who has read all my books. My sister ignored me and turned to Penelope. Well, did he sign it? She asked. Pippi still had the same strange sneer on her face. He signed it all right, she laughed. It was easy as taking cheese niblets from a baby. My mouth dropped open. What was she talking about? And why did she sound like so mean? Trap, Thea, and Benjamin were nodding their heads. He signed it, they whispered to one another. Uh-oh, something very bad was going on. What were they all talking about? And why were they all staring at me? I didn't like it one bit. Who is he? I asked, worried. What did he sign? Instead of answering, Thea, Trap, and Benjamin turned towards Penelope. She pointed her paw at me. You have signed it, Stilton, she shouted at the top of her lungs. You have signed it, and you have nothing you can change about it. I gulped. What was going on? My pee-pee, I protested. I don't understand. What did I sign? Penelope held up her paw in front of me. First of all, she yelled, "Forget the pee-pee from now on. I miss poison fur to you." My mouth dropped open in shock. She'd seemed like such a sweet young rodent on the plane. "Don't look surprised, Stilton," Miss Poison Fur barked. "Just do as you're told and don't make me squeak. Now get on that jeep," she pointed to a yellow truck parked by the plane. I blinked. This was going to get ridiculous. Who was this mouse, and why was she screaming at me? Before I could ask, she shoved a piece of paper into my face. It was the form that I had signed on the plane. "It's too late, Stilton. You've already signed it." Penelope squeaked. I was beginning to get a terrible feeling in my stomach. I glanced at the form. It read, "To the Last Whisker Survival School." "I signed up to some kind of boot camp," I squeaked. "I'm not the boot camp type. I'm afraid of bugs and dirt and things that go squeak in the night. Plus, I look awful in khaki. It's just not my color." Oh, what had I gotten myself into this time? I decided I had only one choice. I had to make a run for it. But just as I turned to leave, Penelope grabbed me by the tail. "Get in the jeep, Stilton," she ordered. Then she handed me a magnifying glass. "You haven't read the small print," she smirked. I read the last line from the form out loud. "Should I refuse to take part in the course or to disobey Miss Poisonfur, I promise to pay a fine of $1 million. I stammered. This was outrageous. "But I don't have $1 million, I cried. My paws were shaking. Penelope shot me an evil look. "Exactly," she sneered. "Now get in that jeep." The fine print said, "To the Last Whisker Survival School." I, the undersigned, agreed to take part in a survival course offered to the late Whisker. The course will last for 7 days. It would take place in Ratty Trap Jungle on a real mosquito. By signing this form, I agreed to obey without question of all Miss Penelope Poisonfur's orders. Should I refuse to take part in this course or to obey Miss Poisonfur, I promised to pay a fine of $1 million. Signed, Geronimo Stilton. I stumbled forward. I must be having a bad dream. I thought. I closed my eyes, but when I opened them, Miss Poisonfur was glaring at me. My family watched me as I climbed into the jeep. "Benjamin," I squeaked, "how could you trick me like this?" My favorite nephew had tears in his eyes. "Uncle, it's for your own good, I promise." Thea had her head nodding. "That's right," she claimed. "You'll thank us." Chap winked at me. The week we will just fly by, you'll see." He added, "Don't worry," Miss Poisonfur squeaked. Then she punched me hard in the shoulder. I winced. This was one tough mouse. "I'll fix you," she sneered. "I'll fix you, all right, Stilton." "But I'm afraid of bugs." The jeep made us go a long way along a paved road. Soon the road turned into a beaten track. Then it became a muddy path. It was so hot, I felt like a walking sprinkler. I was dripping sweat. Clouds of mosquitoes swarmed around me. They were having a party in my fur. I figured my tail was their dinner. They were making a meal out of it. What if they gave me some rare disease? I'm afraid of diseases. We reached the camp in the middle of the night. It looked like an empty barrack. It stood in the middle of a clearing surrounded by very tall trees. I was so tired, I fell onto a smelly bunk bed. I tried not to think about the fleas that were probably crawling in it. I'm afraid of bugs. I was so exhausted, I fell asleep fully dressed. That night, I kept hearing Trap's voice in my dreams. "Just don't think about it," he claimed over and over. "Just don't think about it." At dawn, Penelope gave me a wake-up call. She poured a bucket full of icy water on my head. "Line up," she shrieked. I looked outside. That's when I discovered there were 4 other mice taking this crazy jungle course. I was about to slip into my green jumper suit when I found out I was in my closet. But even though I was in the hot jungle, I put on a clean undershirt first. I love my undershirts. I wear one all the time, even in the summer. That's because I'm afraid of drafts. Unfortunately, Penelope was watching me. Before I could put one paw through my undershirt, she snatched it away and squeaked at the top of her lungs. "Real mice don't wear undershirts, Stilton." I cringed, then put them on the jumpsuit. Penelope threw an enormous backpack at me. It weighed a ton. I'd be lucky if I could take one paw step. Meanwhile, Penelope lifted her own backpack without battling an eyelash. Then I followed her outside. "Forward march!" she yelled. We left camp and began our long trek. I introduced myself to the other mice. "Good morning, everyone," I said. "My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton." A big, tough, muscled mouse nodded at me. He wore his fur in a crew cut. "I'm Bert Burley Rat, but you can call me BB," he announced. "I'm a forest ranger." Next to BB stood a short brown rodent. He clasped my paw. "How do you do? My name is Tubby Tubblemouse," he asked. Then he whispered. "My friends call me Furball," I smiled. Tubby seemed like a nice mouse. I wondered why he had signed up for this course. Tubby told me he was a cheese sales mouse. He had put on a few extra pounds eating too many samples. I thought this was an easy weight loss course. Miss Poisonfur told me it would be like a mini vacation, he explained. Sweat dripped down his fur. "She didn't tell me we'd be forced to run 20 miles a day." "What?" I stammered, sinking under the heavy backpack. 20 miles a day? I'm never gonna survive it. "I've got low blood pressure. I've got low self-esteem. I was going through the worst nightmare I've ever had. How did I ever get myself into this mess?" I sobbed, burying my snout in my paws. Tubby put his paw around my shoulder. "Don't panic, Geronimo," he said. "Don't panic. I brought an emergency supply of cheese sandwiches. They're hidden in my backpack." Just then, a teenage mouse with pigtails scampered over. "Hi there," she chirped. "I'm Susie Squeakers." Next came an elderly female rodent. She was small and skinny, with wiry fur. She wore a pair of thick glasses and a purple baseball cap. She introduced herself as Sandy Silverfur. Sandy was old, but you wouldn't find her in any old mouse home. Not yet. Anyway, Sandy loved to live dangerously. In fact, you could say she was a bit of a daredevil. She once went scuba diving off the shores of Tomcat Island. Unlike Sandy and BB, hiking through the jungle was not any of my idea as a good vacation. Within minutes, my paws were covered with blisters. Suddenly, a terrible screeching filled the air. It was Penelope. She was singing. "I am a rodent, a wild rodent. I have a wild heart. Nothing ever scares me. Nothing ever scares me because I am tough and smart. This course is really super. You learn to be a trooper. You learn to march and sweat and sing. You learn to do most anything." I grumbled. That was the most ridiculous song I had ever heard. Who likes to march? But soon the rest of the group was singing along. Well, you wouldn't catch me joining in. I wasn't into singing. I was having enough trouble breathing. Then someone waved the contract under my snout. It was Penelope. "You signed it, Stilton. Now sing," she demanded. "Sing or you'll be sorry." Her beady little eyes showed right through me. I shivered, then I sang at the top of my lungs. I was so busy singing I had hardly noticed we had entered the forest. Trees as tall as skyscrapers surrounded us. The foliage was so thick we couldn't see any sunlight. The trees were home to all kinds of animals. They called to one another as we passed by. Monkeys, carrots, cheetahs, and snakes watched our every move. We were like a rodent celebrity at an award show. Only no one was snapping our picture. Instead, they were snapping their teeth. This tropical jungle was a very scary place. One wrong poor step and we would be all history. We marched and marched and marched. And then we marched some more. We didn't even stop for a meal. Instead, Penelope handed out sandwiches as we hiked. Unfortunately, they were not cheese sandwiches. They were made of mashed fleas. I had never seen anything so gross in my life. Some of the fleas were still kicking their tiny legs. I was so disgusted, but I was so hungry I ate every bite. We were allowed to stop only to go to the bathroom. Penelope timed us. 15 seconds for each mouse. For any other emergency, we had to hand in a written request. I quickly jotted down a note. "Dear Miss Poisonfur," it read, "would it be possible to take a short break?" Penelope read the note out loud, then laughed. "You sissy rodents are spineless," she smirked. "You're as soft as this bowl of cheese with extra cream, Stilton." She twirled her tail, deep in thought. "This may be harder than I thought," she murmured. Don't worry, I'll fix you. When you're done with this course, you'll be stronger than a maximum strength glue trap. And best of all, You would be smarter than the sharpest street mouse in all of New Mouse City. We marched for the rest of the day. When it turned black, the jungle became even more terrifying. Spooky shadows were everywhere, strange eyes glowing in the trees, nightbirds sang to one each other, and I'm not talking about happy jingles. These songs sounded more like creepy Halloween music. Worst of all, it was dark, very dark. Did I mention I'm afraid of the dark? But I was forced to forget about it. I had to put one paw in front of the other. I had no choice. Finally, at midnight, we stopped. We were so tired. We sat down around a fire. "Come and get it," shouted Penelope, banging on a pot with a spoon. I was starving. I grabbed my bowl and began to slurp the reddish liquid. Seconds later, I started to gag. "Blah! What is this?" I said. Penelope stared. "That's red ant soup, Stilton," she squeaked. "Eat it or you'll be sorry." The rest of us looked at one another. We looked at the soup. Then we looked at Penelope. She glared at us, her paws planted firmly on her hips. The soup looked scary, but Penelope looked like a rabid cat about to go on a hunting spree. Like robots, we picked up our spoon and ate. I was so tired I could hardly chew. Later, I fell asleep with my snout in my bowl. Oh well, at least no one was bothered by my snoring. Slowly, I climbed down. As soon as I reached the ground, BB hugged me. It turns out he wasn't a real forest ranger after all. He was just a pretend forest ranger at Mousy World, the popular rodent amusement park. That explains why he couldn't figure out the compass. 15 minutes later, we reached the camp. Penelope woke us up at dawn with the usual shower of icy water. I was beginning to wonder where she was getting it. I hadn't had a nice icy beverage since we left New Mouse City. After a breakfast of scrambled worms, she gave us a lesson on survival techniques. "Rowdy Tribe Jungle is full of danger," she squeaked. "You must be careful where you step, as you are about to see." She stuck a red flag in the ground. "Sit here, Stilton," she ordered. I was about to sit down when Penelope began to shout. "Don't move, Stilton," she kicked away a leaf on the ground. Underneath lay a huge scorpion. "Be careful where you step," a teacher repeated. "If you sat down, you'd be a dead mouse, Stilton." I shivered. My life flashed before my eyes. Then suddenly someone was poking at me. "No time for daydreaming," Penelope shouted. She pointed to the path ahead. "Danger is everywhere." She said again, "Now walk to the end of the path, Stilton." I set out. I had hardly taken more than a couple of steps when I was suddenly lifted into the air. A rope was hidden in the bushes. It was a trap. "Cheese niblets," I cried. I was dangling upside down. Our teacher chuckled. "See what I mean, Stilton?" she said, cutting the rope that was holding me up. I fell right on my snout. "Ow!" I screamed, but Penelope wasn't finished with me. "Run towards the tree, Stilton," she demanded. I groaned. What would happen to me this time? Would I be blinded by a sharp tree branch? Would I break all my paws? I sighed. Then I took off. Seconds later, I fell into a deep, dark hole. "Help!" I shrieked. Our teacher peeped into the hole. "Are you still alive, Stilton?" She smirked. "Good. Deal with it." Then she turned to the others. "I hope that was with all of you, and I hope you all remembered what has happened to our friend here today," she squeaked. "Now let's go." My mouth dropped open. I began to shake. This was the lowest of the low. How could someone leave me alone in this dark, scary place? I was so horrified. Can you guess why? That's right. I'm afraid of enclosed spaces. I waited 3 hours. Finally, Penelope came back and pulled me out. I was still shaking, but I was proud of myself. I'd done it again. Yes, I, Geronimo Stilton, had faced another fear. The next morning, I got up early, extra early. I hid behind my cabin door. I was going to trick our evil teacher at her own game. When she arrived with her own bucket of icy water, I struck at my paw. She tripped, water flew everywhere, but not a drop landed on me. "Oops," I said when I saw Penelope when she caught me. She handed me a mop. "Clean up this mess," she ordered, but she was half smiling. "Not bad, Stilton," she admitted. "Not bad for a scaredy mouse." After breakfast of fried fleas, we lined up. Penelope said she needed a volunteer, someone who was afraid of spiders. I quickly hid behind BB. "I'm sure you already know why. I'm afraid of spiders." "I'm going to choose a name," our teacher announced. She stared up at the clouds. She pretended to be deep in thought, but she didn't fool me. I knew what was coming. Seconds later, she cried, "Stilton!" "Oh, why did you always have to pick on me?" I sighed and came forward. Penelope picked out a cage of small spiders. Stale Swiss rolls. Just seeing all those spidey legs gave me mouse bumps. Just remember to stay calm, she advised. Now close your eyes, Stilton. She placed something on my snout. Keep very still, our teacher whispered, and whatever you do, don't open your eyes. I tried, but I was curious. I just had to see what was on my snout. Slowly, I peeked open one eye. An enormous spider stared back at me. I was too horrified to squeak. 10 seconds later, for 10 seconds, Penelope ordered. Then she began to count. The rest of the group joined in. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. My whiskers trembled with fear. You can do it, Tubby shouted. You're almost there, Phoebe cheered. Hooray for Stilton. Everyone shouted when the countdown was over. I pointed to the spider with a trembling paw. Take it off, please, I squeaked. Our teacher sneered. She took the spider and waved it under my nose. How strange, the spider's leg didn't seem to be moving at all. In fact, it looked quite stiff. I peered at it closer. It's plastic, Stilton, Penelope smirked. I fainted, but moments later she woke me up with a bucket full of icy water. So much for starting my day off on the right paw. Next, Penelope pulled a huge green snake from a sack. She twisted it up into a ball like a pro. I'm going to teach you how to tell the difference between a poisonous snake and one that is harmless. She said that the one I'm holding now is harmless. Catch it, Silver Fur, she shouted, though it was Sandy. The old mouse was pale, but she still managed to catch the snake behind mid-air. The reptile twisted itself around her neck. Without battling an eye, Sandy shouted, Yippee! Everyone applauded. Penelope grabbed another snake from the sack. She whirled it in the air. Always hold on by the snake's tail, she whispered. This way it can't bite. I watched carefully. It looked so easy. Without thinking, I picked up a snake that looked just like the others. I began whirling it around over my head. Look at me, I shouted with pride. For some odd reason, Penelope didn't look very happy. Maybe she liked to be the only one showing off. Oh well, I decided old Poison Fur would just have to get used to it. The new Geronimo Stilton was brave. He was tough, and he wasn't about to show it. Then I noticed Penelope had dropped her snake. She waved her paws in the air. What was she doing? Some kind of jungle dance? That's the wrong snake, Stilton. Penelope squeaked. It's poisonous. Moldy mozzarella sticks. I was terrified. Don't panic, Stilton, our teacher continued. Just keep whirling it. My knees wobbled. My fur stood to an end. Still, I managed to keep whirling the snake. Penelope began playing a tune on the flute. The snake closed its eye. Soon it fell asleep. I wish I was sleeping too. Old Poison Fur had started yelling at me. Then she picked me up and began whirling me over her head. Now you'll learn, Stilton. Oh, what a day in the jungle it was. Saturday night, we marched non-stop. On Sunday morning, we reached our first camp. We had been gone for 1 week. Still, it felt like a lifetime. Yes, I had to admit, the course in the jungle had changed my life. After our final bug breakfast, we said our goodbyes. I was so sad to see my new friends go. We had been through so much together. Tubby hugged me. Thank you, Geronimo, he said. If it weren't for you, I'd be at the bottom of the river. Susie Squeakers winked at me. It was great to meet you, boss. Pinky would be proud of you. She grinned. Burly Burt Rat crushed my paws in his strong grip, and Sandy Silverfur gave me a photo of my whirling snake. So you won't forget this course, she squeaked. I grinned. I knew I would never forget my adventures in the jungle, or the friends I had made. I had invited them to New Mouse City. Finally, it was Penelope's turn. I've squeaked, you haven't I? She smirked. I shook her paw. Thank you for fixing me, I said. I wasn't about to argue. Penelope had cured me. I felt like a new mouse. I wasn't afraid of anything anymore. I could swim in wild rivers. I could climb trees as tall as skyscrapers. I could even eat bug sandwiches. Of course, I didn't have to like them. From now on, I'll be sticking to my favorite kind of sandwiches. The ones with cheese. Like grilled cheese on rye, ham and cheese on hard roll, and cheese on cheese, and jelly on whole meat. I turned to have to leave, then shouted, Thank you, Miss Poison Fur. Penelope waved. You can call me Pee-Pee, she giggled. She really was one special mouse. Maybe someday I could take her out to dinner after all. As long as she didn't order any bugs, or make me take her mountain climbing, of course. Suddenly, I was surrounded by my family. Thea, Trap, and Benjamin were a sight for sore eyes. I'd missed them so much. Yes, I really had missed them, and my cousins loved to play pranks on me, but they're still family. Yes, then. Just then, my nephew threw his paws around my neck. Are you still angry with me, Uncle Geronimo? Benjamin asked. I stroked his tiny ears. Ah, of course not, my little mousey, I sighed. I love you too much. Then I hugged Thea and Trap too. You guys were right, I said. This course was the best thing for me. I'm cured. The same yellow jeep took us back to the airport from the camp. Then we boarded a plane to New Mars City. I couldn't wait to get home. As we were flying, I thought about everything I had learned. I had faced my fears. I had met 4 great friends, 5 if you count Penelope. Yes, this experience had taught me a lot of things. Like, it's much easier to overcome a problem if you tackle it together. And a bucket full of icy water is a terrible way to wake you up in the morning. The next morning, I went to see Dr. Shrinkfur. Tell me everything, please, he insisted. You were right, Doctor, I squeaked. I went to Ratty Trap Jungle and faced all the fears, and I'm cured. He seemed very happy. I told you it was all up to you. Ugh, my niece is very clever, he murmured. I sat up straight. Miss Poisonfur is your niece? I asked. Yes, Belle. It was Bus who gave her name to your relatives, he confessed. I'm sure it would work. Penelope's style can be a little wacky, but I know she was the one and the only one who could help you. So I guess that's the end of the story. It really all comes down to this. I'm no longer afraid of flying, no longer afraid of the dark, no longer afraid of spiders, no longer afraid of snakes. And as I said, I'm cured. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid. Oh well, there's still one thing I'm afraid of. I'm still afraid of cats. But then again, Dr. Shrinkfur said, that's perfectly normal. After all, I am a mouse.